Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of the Graphic Novel and Comic Roundtables Digital Comics Online or Libcomix Online events. We've got David Barron with us here today. He's going to be doing a digital illustration and coloring for us. He's going to explain a lot more about that. I'm going to silence myself and turn it over to him.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm happy to do this. Today we're going to be coloring the Batman Who Laughs #1 cover. This was originally colored, digitally painted by the artist Jock. The artwork that we would be coloring over is by Jock, and we'll start. So I'm using Photoshop. First thing I always do is I kind of just set up a line art channel. And then we're going to switch the mode. I color in RGB. If you're new to Photoshop, there's multiple ways to color. Whether it's CMYK, which is how it prints, or if it's RGB, I feel like RGB gives me more leeway. The first thing that I normally do is I go ahead and I start flattening the image. That just leaves block coloring, something that's easier for me to select later. This was DC's most popular series last year. I was honored to be a part of it, written by Scott Snyder. We worked with Scott, Jock and I, on a book called Detective Comics: The Black Mirror. That's available for hardcover right now. A lot of the colors that I choose initially will always be changed through light and rendering and just selection in general. I do worry about what I pick up when I color because it does affect my next decision. But for the most part, I just go straight at it and not worry too much during the flatting process. If you're trying to get into comics, flatting is a great way to get your foot in the door. Most digital artists need someone to help prep the pages. This enables us to do more work because it cuts down some of the lag time for us. Again, flatting is the term of making the artwork into block color. I've been coloring for 25 years in comics. I actually started when I was 15 years old at a company called In Color, and this was actually before Photoshop. And we used a polygon-based system called Cod Barrett. And I actually worked for the now publisher of Marvel Comics, John Nee. When I turned 18, I went to Jim Lee's company called Wildstorm Studios. And Wildstorm was a great experience. A lot of great people worked there. A lot of great colorists worked there. One of the best DC Comics colorists of all time, Alex Sinclair, worked there when I was there for a long time. It was a good experience. I learned a lot from so many people. I did not go to college, but I like to tell people that I went to the University of Wildstorm, so Wildstorm U, because I learned from just so many people. I used the lasso tool to help clean up all this color that comes out of the lines. One of the jokes that you hear almost at every comic book convention is, do you color inside the lines? And the answer is yes, I try to. Understanding the character is very important when you color. Now, for those who don't know, this is the Batman Who Laughs. It's Batman, Bruce Wayne, from another dimension. And he was infected by the Joker poison, which is why he looks as he does. But he's still Bruce Wayne, and he still has all of Bruce's mentalities and knowledge and understanding of life and technology. which makes him a very deadly foe. The flatting process can be tedious for a lot of artists. It's one that I feel that every artist needs to do because it kind of sets, as I said before, your tone, your mind. When you're doing production art in comics, like I do and many other professionals do, where time matters, you don't get to spend a lot of time with art. You need to produce it relatively quickly. So it's important to learn this process early on because you don't get that type of luxury later. If you're watching this video and you have questions or comments about what I'm doing, feel free to find my social media and ask them. I'll be happy to answer them as best as I can. Again, we're working in Photoshop. 99.9% of my comic book work is on the computer, with almost all my artwork on the computer. So now that we have the flats done, this is what a flat looks like. You take away the artwork, and there's all the pieces that we are going to play with. I'm going to go ahead and save this real quick. Now we're going to go ahead and get started. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to add some texture to his teeth. We want to add some texture to his mask. It's like a gunmetal type of mask. It can be a bit shiny but a bit dull at the same time. We want to go ahead and light up his leather and then the door itself. We want to figure out what type of lighting, in environment that we want to make, something that's a bit eerie and scary. One of the things that I like to do over Jock's work, Jock does over his own work, is we like to do a color wash over the whole item. So we're going to start with a red over the whole gum, make it a bit more red over the whole item. Select all, fill it. Then I'm going to fade my fill till I get it to where I want to start. And that's pretty good because it has a red tinge over everything. And then we're going to go from there. You got to look for the light, where the light is hitting, how you want the light to go. We definitely want this door shadow a little bit, so we want to provide some of the light here. You can do two ways to save your flats. You can copy and paste them into a channel, which I like to call my flat channel, or just flats. And you paste it in there, and then it just goes grayscale, but you can still select them later. Or kind of the new way is to just copy, and you can color on this layer, and if you ever need to select something, you just go to this the layer below it. Back when I first started, you had to do the flat channel because it took up less room on the computer, which was very important. And this only has about, we're trying to do about a 20-minute video for you, so nothing too long. A lot of times the pieces can take 1 to 5 hours, and sometimes longer in terms of complexity. So we'll go a little bit quicker on this one. I use a screen mode gradient almost on everything I do. I use a cut and grad, which is a style technique. There's airbrushing and all this other different types of styles you can do, but when it comes to Photoshop, cut and grad is what I prefer. Part of the reason it's speed, but I really enjoy the way it makes comic books look more than anything. Every time I use my lasso tool, which is what I'm on now, I'm making a selection. That selection, you can think of it as a mask. And anything that's in that selection, as you can see, gets affected. Anything that is outside does not. I would say it took me about 3 months to learn how to color, but it took me about 10 years to really understand the full coloring process of what we want to do, when, how, why. I learned from several different colorists. One of the great things about working at Wildstorm and the Color House in Color before I did at Wildstorm was I worked with so many different artists that all had different ideas, all had different understandings of what art was in color. This is a very crude and basic style for what I would normally do on a cover, but it does give us a sense of what to expect from a full job. So same thing, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to go ahead and add some red light to his leather mask. This is actually Batman's cowl. It comes down to his nose. It's a little bit different than, you know, what we're used to. What I'm trying to do is find different sections of light to pick out. And as I pick them out, I create more and more shapes. Anytime I feel like I might want to reuse a selection from the beginning, I will save a selection in my channels over here on the right. And that way, it's just easier for me to pick up instead of going to my flat channel or going and trying to reselect the area that I'm coloring. It's one of the advantages of working on the computer compared to working traditionally. Working with Jock is a treat. Jock is one of the best artists in the world, not only for comics, but just in art in general. You can see his work on movies like Ex Machina, Judge Dredd, 3D, and Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I've worked, the first time I worked with Jock was on Green Arrow Year One, where that book was the inspiration for the Green Arrow TV show, Season 1. And it was written by Andy Diggle, and it was just a great experience working with him on that project. Every time I work with an artist, I really learn a lot. And every time I work with Jock is another experience that's unique and joyful. So as you can see, I'm using the same color almost for everything right now, and that is not normal. But when you are washing everything in a certain color, bathing it in a certain light, it is something that you can do. One of the things that I would offer is, in terms of advice for any artist that is doing that, at that point, it becomes about value control, light versus dark, to really make the piece energetic. A lot of times when you wash a piece in one light, you can lose some of the detail. So you don't always want to go too flat or too bright. You need to find that balance, and that comes through experience and understanding of light and art in general. I also recommend when you're working digitally not to zoom in too close. When I was younger, you'd get really close on the teeth and try to make everything perfect. But when you zoom out, all that detail that you added in, is not seen. And it's definitely important to work at a certain distance. Now I'm using a stylus, a Wacom pen. A lot of my friends use Cintiqs, and both are great. I go back and forth, with the Cintiq, but almost all my current stuff and stuff just in general is done on a Wacom tablet. I'm very used to it for how long I've been working on it. But Cintiqs are also great, but for all those people wondering if they're necessary, the answer is no. Digital art is just like art, and in reality, it's just about how much time you spend with your craft, and that's how you'll get the most results out of it. So as you see, we're already building a lot of light. He's already looking quite scary coming in. Bruce Wayne's, personality may not really seem like it's shining through on this cover. It's just more about the terror and the horror, of what we're looking at. In the comic, it's amazing how well Scott Snyder, again the writer, and Jock the artist were able to make this different version of Batman and Bruce Wayne feel like Batman and Bruce Wayne. It was really just a joy to be a part of the inside track of the ride that was Batman Who Laughs. Again, partly because when someone looks at this character, there's no way that they first think, oh, that's Bruce Wayne. That's Batman Who Laughs. Batman. You just think it's some scary character, and as you read the book and the title, you really start to feel how much he is Bruce Wayne and why, and you feel you don't necessarily ever cheer for him, but you definitely can understand that he is someone to fear as much as the Batman is. I actually have this poster hanging up in my office of the original cover. It's one of my favorite pieces that Jock did. The series was originally supposed to be 6 issues, and it was a nice little mini series. And the story, got to be so big and so grand that we actually extended it 1 extra issue to 7. Which is extremely rare for a comic book to do. Usually, when you're set out to do 6 issues, you do 6 issues. You don't extend it. One of the other crazy parts is that we were all able to fit it in. You think, oh, okay, you want to extend it, good news. But again, Jock is one of the best in the world, and with that said, his schedule was extremely packed. So the fact that he was able to fit it in, it's just worked out perfectly. And I guess when that happens, you have something special when everything works out together. Now, this whole time I've worked cut and grad, but in reality, I could have done, a couple different options. I didn't have to work cut and grad. There's some airbrushing I could have done. No matter what my technique is, whether it's a soft brush or a hard brush, or it's or a different tool, one thing that stays with it is my selections. I'm always making selections, whether I decide to airbrush a piece or to cut and grad. So if you're new to Photoshop, learning how to use a lasso tool and a wand tool and all the basics are definitely needed. It's just like, soccer or anything. Learn how to kick a ball before you can really play soccer. And passing's, more important than shooting, and dribbling is more important, than shooting, because it's about ball control. And so artwork itself is about how much control you have over your medium, and your brush, so to say. So one of the cool things about Photoshop is how well you can alter the work after you already did it. There's so many color alternate tools out there that you can change the lighting just like that. If we wanted to make this green, we could instantly make it green and sickly, and that is again a advantage where if I had to do this by hand and then someone asked for a major color change, sometimes you start all the way over. It's almost impossible to just fix it and get the same results. So that's a huge advantage of digital art. Other than digital art, there's not much difference. Sure, there's techniques and discipline differences, but it still takes an eye to understand what they're trying to create with light and color and mood. And so whether you're a digital artist or a traditional artist, it still has a very similar discipline to what is happening. So besides the flatting, I'm actually just using two colors to create everything that we see here, and that's that's a very interesting go, and it's looking a little pink, for me, but that's okay. Again, there's several ways to kind of change the colors, whether it's hue saturation, or we get even more pink and purple and blues. We could find really sick, combinations. Some of that orange, you get oversaturated, you can bring some of that gray back in. This is one of the advantages of Photoshop. So it gives you a lot of alternatives. Occasionally I'll come in and I'll do a selective color over the whole piece where we can get things a bit more where I want them. You also still have your flat channel to go back in and redo some things, tone down certain areas, warm up other areas. There's a lot of trial and error in comics, comic coloring, I should say. And the reason for that is focus and just seeing how the artwork works. One of the great things about a color artist is that they work with multiple artists. And so we're always trying to figure out what's the best way to showcase another artist's work. And that is always the challenge, for me, is how do I make someone else look even better? Right now I'm applying a mask, much like a traditional airbrusher would or animation artist, and that's the focus of it. And we'll see if we can darken and grade a little bit. And now we're really getting this red spotlight on the Batman Who Laughs. Now, if this was normal, I would definitely go in a lot more. We'd be using a couple more textures and just working a little bit. But this is a good way to kind of see, what a digital comic book artist for DC Comics does. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions more in detail, if you're more advanced and you have comic book questions, please let me know. If you're newer to the craft and you want some beginner suggestions, that's great too. I'm around. Thank you very much for being a part of this, and hope everyone's staying safe. Bye-bye.